Through the Leadership Lens is brought to you by Thompson Autogas. Thompson Autogas is the industry's gold standard turnkey solution for all your autogas needs. From funding to refueling and everything in between, Thompson Autogas is there to support your fleet every step of the way.
Hello and welcome to another Through the Leadership Lens podcast, a podcast presented by the Women in Propane Council. I am Freddie Riddler.
And I'm Bridget Kidd, and today we're really excited to have Todd Mouw, Executive Vice President at ROUSH CleanTech, join us. So thanks, Todd. How are you?
It's an honor to be here. It's fantastic. I love my propane people.
Good. Yeah, so do us a favor. We have a lot of people in the propane industry who watch and listen, but will you do, before we get into the meat of the podcast, I have been very fortunate to work with you and at PERC, but will you give us a little bit of an idea of what do you do at ROUSH? What does ROUSH CleanTech do? And then we'll dive in from there.
No, that sounds great. It's hard to believe. Freddie was just asking me 15 years of the mission of what the team does, which is ultimately helping fleets move away from something like diesel to something much, much cleaner and better domestically, propane. So there's a lot more Grimble that goes into it, and there's a lot of engineering know-how that ROUSH puts into it based on the 50 years we've been doing it for a lot of big customers. But ultimately, that's what we do. The team goes out and consults with fleets, understands what their needs are and how we can help them transition to something that's better for them, their bottom line, and the communities they operate in, and happens to be propane, which we love.
Yeah, great. We have Todd is a very familiar face around the trade shows in the industry and working with propane marketers and big companies, and really, I would say you're leading the way in propane as an alternative fuel and kind of displacing diesel, as we like to say. But for our podcast, can you give us an idea, Todd, of what does leadership mean to you?
It's a great question. I wrestle with it all the time, and I think it continues to evolve. But ultimately, the people that we work with, and it's not just direct employees or coworkers. I think it's everybody kind of in our sphere. It's just kind of unifying that group amongst a common vision and a belief set about things we want to accomplish. And ultimately, I think if we can align in this case, a company or industry's goals with people's personal goals, I think that's where you just tend to see the thing really light off and take root. And so that to me is really, there's a lot more that goes into it. Coaching, mentoring, supporting, listening, being a shoulder to cry on. But ultimately, I think it's understanding what motivates people and connecting that to what the vision is of your organization. And I think those two can coexist. In a lot of places, it seems like they don't think it can, but I believe it can. So that's the fun part, is getting those two worlds to exist so that everybody can achieve what they want to achieve, and the shareholders can get back what they've invested as well.
Yeah. And you named off a couple different coaching or leadership skills. Coaching, or do you delegate? Are you a mentor? How do you see yourself as a leader at ROUSH?
Yeah, it's interesting. The company here, it's very much coming from Jack Roush. It's roll up your sleeves and get in there with your team and do it together. And I think I've been lucky enough, when I first job out of college working for a high-tech company in California, it's a boss that I had, was the best way to get people to do it is to get in there with them and show them how to do it and show that no one's above any certain task. And so I think that that is motivational, was to me, as I was kind of growing up in this organization, other businesses, just seeing a boss that's willing to put the boots on and go to work with you side by side versus just delegating it to you. So I think, and from that too, I think you learn kind of what the challenges are that your people are encountering. Maybe you discover new opportunities because you get back in those details that maybe you haven't been as close to in the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. So I actually enjoy that part of it. Matter of fact, last week, we're building some propane engines for our best partner, Bluebird. And all of a sudden we've got this uptick in demand that's come, which is fantastic. And it had been probably 4 years since I actually went down and built an engine. And so the guys on the shop floor were like, this guy's not trained. We can't let him in here. But, eventually they coached me up. And at the end, I got a green label and said, we can ship this thing to Bluebird, which was fantastic. So,
that's awesome. And I bet, Todd, from your experience, you guys have some pretty tough headwinds against you, like we all do in the propane industry, right? So do you feel like your leadership style or your leadership perspective has changed as we get more and more headwinds, right? As the external challenges are increasing, has your style of leadership changed at all?
I think great question, Bridget. I think it probably changed around COVID. I mean, I was kind of I'll call it an old dog, where you kind of have to have people in the office, and I got the energy of having people together, but COVID kind of forced the virtual world, where ultimately, if you have great people, whether they're in your office or 2,000 miles away, you trust them. You have a common set of goals and a way to kind of measure each other and success, and good things happen. But I think the headwinds piece of it is maybe because I'm a sales and marketing guy by trade. I'm the eternal optimist. In how we take those headwinds and turn them into a positive. And I think it's a great example. Like what we're encountering now is it's everything. Let's electrify everything, including school buses. And so I think ultimately what it's done for us is it's created more awareness of why diesel's bad. And while yes, they're doling out a lot of money for EV school buses, the reality is that pot's pretty small. And I've shown the team that that's created more awareness for us. Now customers are coming to us saying, okay, I know diesel's bad. I can't afford, there's no more money for EV. What else can I do? And perfect segue. It's Propane's there to answer the call for them. So, I guess you got to be realistic too and accept the challenges and the headwinds, and there will always be those. But I think if we as leaders can help navigate and kind of flip the script on that and turn that into a positive or a way for us to solve a problem, I think good things come from that.
I love how you. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Bridget. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think when you have a technical solution that works, right? Your leadership can come in the form of the confidence in what you're doing, and then also the people around you. You're not questioning the quality of the product or the quality of the solution. It's just a matter of, like you're saying, telling that story and having the confidence and the trust in your people to do it.
Yeah, and I think we're lucky enough, and I think the propane industry is another good example, is that our CEO says all the time, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I think our people feel that. And while maybe there's a quote unquote loss today, ultimately it's a relationship gained. And I think people trust people that tell them the truth. And it's amazing the number of customers we've said, look, go try EV and hope it works for you, and we'll be there to support you. And amazingly enough, 12, 18 months later, they come back and they said, maybe not quite as advertised. So, but again, you have to have the leadership and the company and the culture to be able to say, okay, we might miss our numbers for a month or 2 months. And as long as we're doing the right things fundamentally and helping each other, then that's okay. We'll eventually get the thing back on track and good things will come.
Yeah, and I'll weigh on a little bit of that too. I was going that same direction, Bridget. You talk about headwinds, right, from the industry saying, or not just the industry, just everywhere around you about the whole diesel and the electrification. It's one thing to set your sail a different direction, to take the positive of all that and say, hey, we'll use this in our advantage. But it's your staff. Your staff. You have to they have to trust you. They have to say, hey, listen to me, because I know it doesn't seem like we could make this work listening to the outside noise. But trust me, I have a solution to get us through this. And it sounds like you guys have done that. Like you gained the trust of your staff.
Yeah, I mean, trust, obviously, that's the foundation of it. But I think that the examples and the history, and even if it's personally, right, when you ask your team, the thing that they thought that was a major issue in their lives, when they look in the rearview mirror 6 months later, was it really that big of a deal? You found your way through it, right? And all of us really the last 3 years figured that out with COVID and supply chain and everything else. So I think, excuse me, I think it's the persistence. And look, you can't hide your head in the sand from the tough stuff, right? You got to deal with that. But I think if you deal with that and then also talk about the positives that can come from it, and then get smart people together, figure out a solution, I think that's motivational to me.
For sure. What about Todd? You mentioned Jack Roush as being kind of a mentor to you and you follow his style, but maybe prior to coming to ROUSH CleanTech or in your career or personally, who's been an influential leader, somebody that you want to emulate?
Yeah, it's interesting. Great question. Obviously, Jack's right at the top. My dad, I just lost my dad. He passed from cancer about 4 months ago. But and there's one more I'll reference, but my dad was relentlessly, and I just gave his eulogy. And the thing that stuck out to me was how relentlessly positive the guy was. No matter what came at him in his life, he would say to me, he's just like, that's a rearview mirror. And he goes, there's a reason the rearview mirror is a lot smaller than the windshield, because the stuff in the past hey, not that you can't address it and think about it, but let's look forward. And so he just was one that no matter what came at us in life, that was the attitude. I want to carry that forward for my kids and my coworkers and anybody I run into. That part of it, I think, is you see the people that have the glass half empty, and everybody has their struggles. But boy, I want to be that guy that carries the glass half full mentality to as many people as I can, because I think the world needs that. But beyond that, there was my first boss out of college. I worked for a high-tech company out in California. His name was Gary Berman, and he was the best. Just a selfless leader who was willing to dig in, work long hours. There was no task, whether it was cleaning up a bathroom, cleaning up a coffee spill, to meeting with Fortune 100 companies. He would do it all, and so just it instilled such a positive work ethic in me that to this day, that's been almost 30 years that stuck with me, and what great life lessons he passed on to me. The other piece too, he was married at the time, so I was just a young punk. I was 22, fresh out of college, and at that age, you want to go take the world by storm, and really, there's no such thing as called work-life balance. It's let's just go kill and conquer. And so Gary was obviously almost 40, had 2 kids. In that time in Silicon Valley in the 90s, it was everybody, IPOs, everybody working hard to make a bunch of money. He was doing that, but also had a great wife and 2 great kids. And I always admired the fact that he would make time for that. Other people would talk about it, but they didn't necessarily action it. And the fact that he treasured that more than the job and the bank account, to me, is something that's stuck with me for a long, long time too.
Yeah. That's some great.
That's the minute back, right? That the minute's the most important thing, and we all talk about how important it is to sell more propane school buses, but at the end, the only thing that matters is that what are your family and friends, what legacy did you leave, and how much time did you spend with those loved ones? And so you got to balance that with your team too.
Yeah, it's funny because when we do these interviews, it always talks about, at the end of the day, it's the propane family. And when someone asks mentoring or who do you look up to, they're always parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, mothers. It's fun to hear the stories that you're here because of someone in your life, really close to your life, some family member. So that's cool to hear. I love the reference of the rearview mirror smaller than the front windshield. I'm going to use that because I love inspirational quotes, and that made the day's the best quote I've heard all week. I love it. And it's only Monday. So thank you for sharing that.
I don't know where it came from, but if you want to give Gary Mouw the credit for that, whenever you reference it, I'm sure he'll be smiling.
I will.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, that is what a great legacy to leave, and to know that is something that you left behind and you prioritize is amazing. That's great.
So one of the questions we like to ask, and I personally want to know this, and I'm guessing there's going to be a few viewers that are going to want to know the same thing. Todd, with leadership comes risk, right? So we always talk about a decision you made, a risky decision, and whether or not it worked or not. And to take propane and say we're going to run a school bus off of propane, that's a huge risk. I mean, tell us the story about how your company, ROUSH, how CleanTech one day just said we're going to run a school bus off of propane.
Freddie, it's interesting. I think probably from the outside in, it looks like a risk, but we were so embedded with the propane industry, really starting back in 2006. I wasn't with the company yet, but some guys, Brian Feehan, who still is remembered, approached ROUSH and said, hey, can you make an F-150 run on propane? And so being a company that is really more focused on technical challenges than it is profit and financials and things like that, I think our company's like, oh, cool, we make an F-150 run on propane. And so ultimately that kind of led us down a path with a certain vehicle type for 4 or 5 years. We kind of got to know the folks at Bluebird and ultimately realized they had a previous generation product, but I don't think they'd made enough of an impact with it. And so we really thought that with a Ford engine and our brand together with Bluebird, with the propane industry, we could make a huge impact. And so we did get a lot of questions early days, like, holy smokes, this thing's a bomb. I remember my first school board meeting was in Illinois. And I remember one of the school board members saying, you want to put my kids on that thing? It's a bomb. And I remember explaining to the school board, because the Bluebird dealer took us into the meeting, all the positive attributes. And at the end, they're like, oh, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to order these 3 propane buses. We're going to rock and roll. And afterwards, he came up to me. He's just like, how come I don't know this? And I'm like, it's a good question. That ultimately, it's our job, in the industry's job, to go educate and promote why
Mm-hmm.
this is probably the best kept secret when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
transportation energy. And so, again, I guess you could call it a risk. I don't think Jack Roush felt that way, or Evan Lyle, our CEO, felt that way. It was taking our technical aptitude, trying to go solve a technical problem, and then putting our brand behind it. And it's been a fun ride. Although I think the brightest days are still ahead. To be honest,
Mm-hmm.
I think
For
the
sure.
biggest
Mm-hmm.
growth.
Propane school buses are the best kept secret. I mean,
Yep.
it's except for those districts that are using it. I mean, it's an incredible story.
It's interesting. We had a couple districts from Georgia through here 2 weeks ago where they were training some technicians, and they have not yet adopted. And at the end, when they heard the message around domestic fuel, lower cost, value to the district, emissions profile, they're like easy to work on, much easier than diesel. They're like, I need to ask our leadership what the heck we're doing here. I'm like, well, that's
Mm-hmm.
actually a good question. Why don't you go back and ask them in a nice way? Let's
Yeah.
not offend them. I said that, if you could say that and say maybe a purchase order to follow, we'd be really
Right.
happy with that. So it is our job. Let's go out and communicate the benefits of it. And our team loves it. I got to be honest with you. We've got 74 people here dedicated between
Wow.
sales, marketing, engineering, program management, supply chain, all the way through that are unified with that vision that at the end, matter of fact, we just had a town hall last week. We talked about it. 20,000 school buses saving $4,000 per year. You
Wow.
think about those dollars back into hiring more teachers, iPads for kids, other curriculum. What if you can put your head on a pillow at night and think about the impact you're making across the world?
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty good one.
Mm-hmm.
It really is a great story. And I mean, to me, I would always think rather than it being a risk, it was a great kind of melding of innovation and back to that confidence in the technology. Each of those partners was so confident, and Brian Fee and I laugh. Brian is still just such an important person for the industry. You think about how many of those products do we still have to find? Right? There's so much innovation happening in the propane industry, but it takes leadership and it takes companies willing to say, we are confident in this and we are going to put the money behind it and the staff behind it, because it may take a couple years. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight,
Mm-hmm.
and I agree with you. I think the brighter days are ahead of us, even though it's been such a great ride so far.
I agree. It's funny when you talk about the company. My first full year I started in 2009, we were incubating CleanTech in our performance division. 2010, we formed CleanTech. 2011, I remember sitting with our owners, including Jack, and we lost $11 million. Lost $11 million. I'm thinking, man, I got to freshen up my resume. This is going to be ugly. And so at the end, we're going through the kind of year-end review, went through it, talked about hey, look, we're investing in the good stuff's going to come. I promise you, the good stuff's going to come. And I remember him just saying, stand on the gas, keep going. So
Yeah.
again, having the companies, and I think that permeates through to people that are comfortable and willing to take some risk and make some mistakes in order to push the thing forward. And I think if you create a environment of fear where people aren't willing to do that because maybe it's only about the P&L, I think then ultimately you kind of reap what you sow. So it's fun to work for a company like that.
Yeah. What do you guys do? Maybe what do you personally do, or what does CleanTech do, or across the organization to really develop leadership skills?
Yeah, it's something we wrestle with. I think we about 5 years ago hired a new head of HR, and she kind of came in with a different perspective, a different lens. Traditionally, Roush has been really siloed because in a lot of cases, a different division may be working on something ultra secretive for Disney or for the military or for an OEM like Ford. You really couldn't share. And with that, the kind of you wanted to keep your people compartmentalized in that because you've invested so much in them. So I think the last 3-4 years, it's the ability to go share different opportunities within the business, allow people to be comfortable with. Matter of fact, we just had a gal that wanted to go interview for a position down in Florida with our entertainment division. And I think previously the culture would have been maybe no, because that's going to create more work on me to try and backfill you. But now, I mean, ultimately I think that what a great testament that is to us. If someone is growing, spreading their wings, and they want to go experience something new, and likely maybe even come back because they believe so much in our mission. So there's, I would say it's gotten better, but still, I think it's within each kind of management group that we kind of lead our own charge there with our team to help them grow. We do a lot of, on our side, a lot of community engagement. Obviously, if somebody wants to go back and get another degree, by all means, we'll support that. But I would rather understand kind of what motivates the person themselves, right? And so I think if you understand that, then you can kind of help create what that next path is to help them, whether it's school, whether it's another job, whether maybe leave Roush and go somewhere else because there's an itch they can't scratch here. So I think if you understand those personal motivations first, then you can kind of choose your own adventure from there and help them kind of create that.
Yeah. You mentioned community involvement. That's important to me. I really love or respect people that can focus so much on their job, but yet have enough time to give it back to the community. We do that here at RCC quite a bit. We walk in the park, we do polar plunge, we jump through frozen lakes to raise money. Just the craziest things ever. But it takes a team to be crazy enough to do all these different things. But talk to me, Todd, a little bit about your community involvement at ROUSH.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we've got one great story of a kind of a collision of a customer who's become a really good friend and a partner. And so ABC Student Transportation, the guy that leads that organization, Brian Flags, and this was pre-COVID, they approached us and said, and we had been selling propane school bus technology to them since like 2015 or 2016. So I think it was 2017, Brian approached us and said, do you know we do this for the kids of Detroit? And I said, well, what is it that you do, Brian? Ultimately, they take 300 kids before Christmas, and they kids that likely aren't going to have the Christmas that we have all probably enjoyed and wish every kid could get a chance to enjoy. And they not only do a collection with some of their partners from a money perspective, but ultimately then pull employees in like me and other folks from my team to actually accompany the kid on a shopping spree. So
Wow.
It's a Saturday morning, and I tell you what, it's the best day of the year for me.
I bet.
All these propane buses pull in at about 7:00 in the morning on a Saturday.
Wow.
There's a bunch of people around. These kids come in with a list in their hand of wants and needs, and you basically act as Santa and go around with them and help them get what they want. And ultimately, we're supposed to just spend $100 a kid, but every time it ends up being, well, wait a minute, we just spent $400 on that kid.
Yeah.
There were too many things that he wasn't going to get from Santa Claus that he wanted to make sure he got. So, I probably have almost 30 people from this organization that support that.
Oh, that's awesome.
That same partner, we've done a dunk tank. It was actually our in 2021, our summer barbecue party that we had. We actually got a dunk tank and raise money to then fund that shopping spree around Christmas, another funding mechanism for that. So I don't know. There's a lot of motivation for people to give back. I think that's Jack. Jack Roush was a teacher by trade, and as tough as he was, I would say he's softening a little bit in his older years compared to where he was. But ultimately, there was always a lesson in everything he taught you, or everything that he exposed you to, and so. I think it's cool to see there's so many of those folks that kind of feel the same way at Roush, that we're going to carry on that legacy. And matter of fact, Jack just donated $1 million to Eastern Michigan University in the last couple of years to really help propagate the development of more technicians for automotive technology.
Wow.
So it's just, anyway, that kind of giving back to the community, obviously it impacts our world, but he doesn't have to give $1 million back to a university to help fund more kids getting interested in automotive technology. But that kind of leadership from his top down, again, cascading from the organization, and everybody kind of finds their own niche, if you will, that interests them. But there's a lot of that goes on here at Roush.
I can hear it when you tell the story about him, that you really enjoy it, because I feel like you're living through it. You know what I mean? Like he's teaching you, and you're actually teaching others, because you're telling the story like you're the one deciding to donate $1 million. You're telling the story like you're the one that said, let's do this Santa Claus running around getting kids presents and everything else. It's fun to hear that, because even though at the end of the day it's Jack saying, let's do this, you're the one that's taking the most enjoyment out of it, because it's almost like he's giving you the bandwidth to say, go do it. And that's cool to hear that story come through you.
Yeah, and I think employees want to, especially today's world, as crazy as it's gotten, I think people really want to have a mission beyond just clocking in at 8 and leaving at 5, right? I mean, I think there's got to be a bigger cause. And whether we were good or lucky or a combination thereof, but it's pretty cool how we've kind of melded that here at CleanTech with, granted, we do propane commercial vehicles too, but that's not as saving a for-profit company money. I mean, that's great, right? Love them burning propane, but the school bus thing is just the fact that we can help transform that and that it gives back in so many different ways to the communities we're supporting is something that I think a lot of people will feel good about as their careers, is they're kind of right in that final chapter in their career that they were a part of.
One more quick
Well,
question.
you're willing to work hard. You
Yeah.
will work hard, and you'll do what you have to do to see that be successful. Sorry, Freddie.
No, that's okay. I love it. I have one more quick question about the school bus thing. So, not with the kids, the propane school buses. When you guys bring a new propane fueled school bus to a school district, is there like some grand ceremony? Do you like get to be the first one to drive the kids around, like, or you just drop it off and say, "Here you go"? Like, I'm just curious of how that works with CleanTech.
I think, and Bridget probably remembers this, there was probably a lot more early days. I mean, now there's about 1,000 districts that run propane school buses. There were a lot more early days that wanted to kind of do the ribbon cuttings and the PR around what it was doing to help their community and help their school district. Although it's funny now, it seems like that started to come back again because the influx of existing customers who are like, "Hey, I just deployed my 200th bus. Let's go talk about it. Let's celebrate."
Yeah.
So maybe it's just, I think people want to hear some good news and they want to
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
they see, I'll call it the news now, right? I mean, I think some stuff that's actually making an impact to people's lives in a positive way.
Well, and I think locally, as much as there's global issues and, and everybody's thinking globally, people still want a good story in their town, right? And you still want to know that your kids are safely getting to school and that, the money is being used wisely and there's some fiscal responsibility there. I think the fanfare around it, like you've said, is kind of decreased, thankfully, because it's not as unique, right? And there's 1,000 school districts. But with renewable propane coming on, we're seeing a little bit more uptick of press and media interest in kind of alternative fuels and propane being this solution that ticks all of the boxes and maintenance and emissions and safety and financial benefits. But locally, you still have that school district that should be patting themselves on the back and screaming from the rooftops that they are contributing positively in each of these areas.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the benefits of being, or I guess drawbacks, of being mainstream now, right? When we're not the new kid on the block. You see with EV, somebody just got their first bus. They've got no infrastructure. The thing will be a paperweight for 9 months, but they still want to celebrate it, right?
Right.
It's interesting. The town where I live, I'm friends. I play golf with a guy that's on the school board, and they were talking about EV school bus. And he's like, "Can you come talk to us about it?" So I went and met with the board, and I said, "Look, I'm going to take my Roush hat off and just tell you what I know." And they just wanted to know about EV, and I said, "Look, it ultimately will eventually have its place. Is it the be-all, end-all? It's absolutely not. What I, as a taxpayer, if I found out that we were spending that kind of money on something that really was not going to have the impact to make people's lives better, I think that would be a shame. If the state through the Clean School Bus is willing to give you $400,000 to pay for one, I guess I would say take it. At least you can learn from it and apply those lessons learned so that if ever does become more commercially viable, at least you've got that experience. Now, with the other 15 buses you got to replace, those better all be propane. But I said, other than that, you're good. So it's interesting. I think I do feel like the mainstream thing has the benefit. It's kind of like Cummins announcing they've got a propane engine coming. When you're the only kid on the block talking about how great your widget is, people are like, "What's wrong with those guys?" But now all of a sudden it's Roush and Cummins talking a little bit about propane. So it helps legitimize that we're here to stay.
Right.
Oh, I still get excited reading about the articles in the BPN and LP Gas magazines every time they talk about the next propane fueled anything. I'm like, "Oh, I got to read that." Because I think it's we don't have them here in Minnesota. Well, there could be some in Minnesota, but not around the county I live in. But I'm waiting for that. I'm like, if you guys need any help or information about that, I know of some people in the industry that could come in and talk about it.
Oh, you do, Freddie.
I know.
You bring us in, Freddie. I tell you, we've got 2 great dealers in Minnesota, and we've had a lot of success there. So you tell us when to come. We'll parachute and make that happen.
This is a great opportunity to give a shout out to the Minnesota Association, who's
Oh my
who's doing
God.
a great job
Lead by
promoting. I mean,
example.
all fuels, but the Minnesota, a lot of the associations do. I mean, all of them do great work, but they're particularly strong in the school bus side.
They are. Yeah.
All right, let's have some fun. Are
All
you
right,
ready?
I'm ready. This has been
Not
fun
that the
already.
rest wasn't fun.
Yeah,
Not that the rest wasn't fun.
wow. That wasn't fun at all. Let's have some fun.
I take that part back.
This is the whip round. It's a lot of fun. It's just really quick answers, quick questions, quick answers. So I'll let Bridget kick it off.
All right, this is my favorite question. What do you keep in the trunk of your car?
Golf clubs.
That was fast.
That was fast. I like it.
It's almost like he's been asked that before.
It's my golf clubs and my son's golf clubs because those go hand in hand. If you got it was a great lesson from my dad. He goes, "You never know when you're driving somewhere. Maybe you'll see a great range. You can go hit some balls. Always have your clubs in the car."
Oh, that's
So
good.
how old is your son?
He's 9. Yeah,
wow.
And it's funny. I was just looking at pictures from Father's Day yesterday. It's like he is mini me. I'm just
Is
hoping
he?
he ends up taller and smarter than I am. I hope I don't hurt him with that being too short. It's actually funny. My dad was vertically challenged as well, and so at his eulogy, one of his buddies from college stood up and said, "Do you know what your dad's nickname was in college?" I'm like, "I can only is this PG, please?" Because my son's here. He goes, "Yeah, his nickname was the dwarf that grew too much." I'm like, "Oh, oh great." So anyway, I hope that he definitely is not as vertically challenged as his old man. So
Oh,
that's
fun. Funny.
It's funny you're talking about being short. Bridget's what, 5'11"?
Yeah.
6 foot. I'm 6'2". So yeah, it's when we take group pictures of our 3 Leadership Lens podcast, it's Bridget and I, and everyone else is about a foot shorter than us.
Solid.
I'm 5'9" on a good day. So
Not a good day.
Yeah, I like it.
So Todd, if you weren't in the propane industry, what would be your ideal job?
Oh, I would own a golf course. Would love it. I've always wanted. That's an itch that I almost in 2006 almost bought a golf course with a friend of mine in Ohio, and I'm glad I didn't work out. Right, we were trying to make it work, but ultimately the company that was in the area that drove most of the demand actually about 2 years later went under. So that
geez.
Oh man, right.
You know, everything happens for a reason. But I love golf. I love. Matter of fact, yesterday playing golf, having a 13-year-old kid caddy for me, and so again, that ability to help mentor and teach, and give back, and so I just would always love to own a golf course. If I was ever lucky enough, that would probably be it.
Wow,
Todd,
that's awesome.
You and my husband are never allowed to meet. Okay.
Oh, is he ready to buy one?
We would. Whatever it takes to get. If he has to buy it to be on it all the time, we're in. We're in. All right. What about if you had a superpower, what would it be and why?
Well, that's a good one. I don't know that I really thought about that one. If I had a superpower, I think if I could have it would be to be able to go back in time. And I think I would do that because as much as I talk about, I think natural, right? That the lessons you learn, you want to just be able to go back and apply them and maybe correct the mistakes you made. But for me, it's probably, I think as my son gets to the age where he recognizes whether his dad's a good guy or bad guy, I think any time in my life where I'm sure it happened, I cringe when I think about it, but maybe where I wasn't patient enough with somebody or wasn't nice enough to somebody or didn't give somebody the benefit of the doubt. I'd like to go back and change that because I know that way my son would say my dad's really a good guy.
Yeah, but he sees the how you react to that stuff. That's the most important thing.
That's true.
The situation's done. Now, how do you react to it? And that's an important lesson for kids. Is you could have a really bad day, but it's how you react, and that's really neat. That's fun that you go back in time, even talking about your analogy of the little rearview mirror and the big picture window. I love that still.
I guess I'm not listening to my dad then, if that's the case. If I'm trying to
if you're trying to go back in time.
He'd probably be cracking the whip saying, come on, look forward.
Todd's trying to fix things. Everyone else we ask, they say, I wish we could fly because then I could just go to Paris for the day, have something to eat, then fly back.
I mean, it's something you can do. I mean, that's not really super popular, right? I mean, it may cost more money than we have, but you
could do it.
Yeah. Right. So, Todd, if you had to describe yourself in one word, what would that word be?
Oh, wow. One word. friendly. I think that, it's interesting when you think about, can you call yourself smart? You can't, because there's always somebody smarter. But I think it's interesting that the world, we need more people that, and actually, let me think about that. I think friendly or humble, because I think that in our world today, we need a lot more of that from everywhere. And if we're all a little bit nicer to each other and go that extra mile, I think there's just the difference that would make. And so I think now probably I've recognized that. And I think maybe as being an old dad, I'm almost 50 and I've got a 9-year-old, and maybe it's a good benefit that I started late, and that it's being nice to people. Because my son doesn't care how much money you got or how many propane school buses you sold, although he does ask. He's like, "Did you sell anything today?" So
it's a lot of pressure.
But he does like the fact that, like my dad, this was a sorry to segue and bounce around a little bit, but at his eulogy, I got from his passing to his eulogy was about 3 months, and I got 241 text messages from people that some of them were golf related, some were business, some were college. But ultimately, every one of them was talking about him being positive, but ultimately that he was the nicest guy and approachable, and that everybody liked my dad. And so I saw the way my son lit up when he heard that. And so I think that to me is a trait that we all could try to be better at, for sure.
Wow.
For sure. All right. What's your favorite ice cream? Flavor, not brand. We don't support any brands.
Oh, yeah. I would say probably like a chocolate fudge. I'm trying to get lean and mean. You get older, the metabolism slows down. So I'm trying to do less of that. But, I got to be honest with you, Schwann's, not to name brands, but, they've run propane since
solid propane user. Solid propane user.
Yep.
You got to support the cause. And in fact, they come to your door and deliver it to you.
It doesn't get easier than that.
Terrible.
Yeah.
So Todd, what's your ideal vacation?
I just had it. I mean, my son and I, for Easter, we rented a house down in Florida. We've always talk about golf. We didn't golf once.
No.
We sat in a pool every day. We went to the beach. I made him pancakes in the morning. We went and tried some new restaurants. So any day I can have with my son, it's again, the perspective of maybe as an older dad, and maybe, it's funny, Facebook memories, I wish they would stop, because it keeps popping stuff up.
It's so sad.
All of a sudden I start crying. Everyone's like, "What's wrong with," like Chelsea Uphouse, like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "Well, I'm looking at a memory of when Cameron was 4. I think it's, it happens so fast. So any time I can spend with him where it's just he and I 100% of the time I'll take that. Whether we're in Florida or sitting in Livonia, Michigan, or Royal Oak, Michigan, or wherever, it doesn't matter to me. It's time with him's a vacation.
Yeah. Oh, that's
good
great.
For you.
All right. I'm going to ask one more question. Okay. If you wrote a book about your career so far, what would the title be?
Wow. You guys didn't give me enough warning, so that I like this. What would the title be? Actually, just because somebody just called me this, but somebody called me the Prince of Propane. So maybe that's what I would
There you go.
Prince of Propane.
I love it.
Someone's going to watch this and say, "Okay, Todd, you have to explain the book that's titled The Prince of Propane."
Yeah, it's funny. My son, people ask him, "What does your dad do?" And so he's like, "He makes things run on propane." And so all his other third grade buddies were like, "Oh, that sounds really cool." And one of the kids was like, "Well, what does it smell like?" So literally, I'm in class describing to 17 other kids and Cameron what propane smells like in that process. And I'm like, "Boy, something's really wrong with me." The fact that I'm taking this time to talk about propane and ethyl mercaptan and rotten eggs and all the other stuff that comes with it was cute. But then all the kids were asking questions, so it was fun. Yeah, the Prince of Propane.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, explaining that is a special treat for them, I'm sure.
Anything that smells like rotten eggs is a fun treat for 9-year-old boys.
Oh my God.
So
I think if their imaginations can run with that.
Yeah.
They can run. Well, that was all the questions.
Thank you. Yes.
We have, Todd.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm glad we got a chance. Thank you guys for including me. Anytime you need a stand-in, I'll have to think about the questions. What curveballs you can throw at me next time, but I really appreciate
we'll come up
with
new questions.
Yes.
We'll come up with new questions. But thanks, Todd.
No
this
problem.
was really fun.
Thank you, guys. Have a great week. See you soon. Take care. Bye.
This has been another episode of Through the Leadership Lens, presented by Women in Propane. Be sure to subscribe, download, and share with a friend. To learn more about Women in Propane, visit us on Facebook, Instagram, or online at www.womeninpropane.org. I'm Freddie Riddler.
And I'm Bridget Kidd. Thanks for listening. Until next time.